Yo, Retroid Pocket 3 Plus is with us, and that didn't take too long, did it? Just about 3 months ago, we had the Retroid Pocket 3, which I did cover a lot of details on that, so I'm sure a lot of you guys, just including myself, are quite annoyed because I would have just held off for the Retroid Pocket 3 and saved that bit of money. But Go Retroid did supply us a fair few options about purchasing this yourself. The one I did was going around about getting that upgrade board. If you see it on their website listing, you can choose that as an option and you do save a bit of money. But the overall cost, if you did fork out for the Retroid Pocket 3 and then the upgrade board, then it does fork out quite a lot of money, more than a Nintendo Switch itself. They provide the 3 Plus model with more colour variants this time and supply replacement cases for all the available colours with built-in screens. The transparent blue one here is something I'm sure to be a sucker for purchasing in the future. For the meantime, simple black and looking cool is all good. Now when you compare the specs of the Plus to the original Retroid Pocket 3, we do have 4GB of RAM this time when you had access to only 3GB, but it's not just the more of it, we do have faster speed of the RAM as well, a 40% improvement, and we do have a 400% more internal storage, so instead of 32GB we now have 128, so definitely a big improvement with storage. And when it comes to the battery, if you bought this handheld straight up, we do have 4500 milliamps, which is a 12.5% increase compared to the Retroid Pocket 3 4000 milliamps. And of course, we do have an improvement with the CPU board and the GPU, with the CPU now pushing a 6-core processor and the GPU now pushing 850 MHz. But for you guys, I did do a how to install the upgrade board video. If you want to check that out, that is in the description box below. But in this video, we're going to find out if this is a good handheld to get your hands on in the first place. So for newcomers, I do think this is pretty awesome, and if you only got to fork out the original price that it is now, it is a great deal. So as I did purchase the upgrade board itself, I wouldn't go into detail about the handheld and the ergonomics and the button layout. If you want to check that out and information I do supply, hit that video on the Retroid Pocket 3 review instead, and then come back here and I'll give you some comparison of what the Plus is like with the Retroid Pocket 3. And by the end of the video, you may be thinking, is this worth picking up now, or just wait another few months down the line for another upgrade? Well, upon its first boot up, no installation was needed, straight into the main dashboard with very minor apps installed. May be different for the people who brought the rp3 Plus as a complete system, but I'm sure it should be the same process as what the rp3 was originally. So we are rocking out with the same Android version as the rp3. But here I will have to head back to the beginning and set this thing all back up just like what the rp3 was. Hopefully, even if you have bought the upgrade board or the complete handheld as the rp3 Plus, you have your save files and your settings backed up already to import back over. So first things first, I downloaded RetroArch straight from their website to get those retro gaming emulation on the go, and then for N64 I downloaded Mubean 64, then for Saturn, Yabu Sashiro 2, Redream for Dreamcast, Aether SX2 for PS2, Dolphin for GameCube, which is very handy that this handheld does have Play Store included, so you can get these all downloaded and up and ready. But these apps should have been included, or some of them at least, already installed, just like what you had experienced with the rp3. And lastly, as my front end to display all my games and titles, I downloaded daijisho, which is a great front end that recently kind of came out. It's just one of my personal favorites. If you are new to daijisho as a front end, if that is how you pronounce it correctly anyway, I did do a video on how to set this up on your retro gaming handheld. If you want to check out that video, that is in the link below. With this upgrade, I thought to even finally get around on getting a bigger SD card, doubling the original space that I had. As with all these Black Friday deals that are going around, I picked this up for less than £30, so I thought that was a great deal. Now finally, this is all set up and ready, just like what my rp3 was. Now before we go ahead and test this emulation performances and compare it to the rp3, I was very excited to jump into this Android gaming performance. As now we have specs that are hitting a medium to higher range phone from just a couple of years ago, we do have a Geekbench score of the original rp3 hitting a 373 for the single core and a 745 multi-core. With the rp3 Plus jumping with a single core to 383, not much of a major difference, but the multiple core score is jumping to 1434. One of my favourite titles that got brought over to Android was Streets of Rage 4, and when I run this on the RP3 it runs pretty great on minimal settings, where the frame rate dropping from about 50 to below 40 at some times, but it was a good solid experience. But with the RP3 Plus we are getting a solid 60 frames with some minor dips hitting to 50 here and there with the graphics settings set to max, so a pretty awesome step up here. Call of Duty is now running very smooth and playable, even though you do have to put that over screen control layout, making it more or less of a joy, but still runs pretty awesome.
Enemy. Target down. Enemy contact. Contact with enemy.
Friendly hunter-killer drone deployed.
Enemy in sight.
Friendly predator missile inbound.
Target down.
Looks like I still got it in for me. Haven't played this title for ages. Oh, I just got the edge using this handheld. Awesome fun. Genshin Impact game that does take forever to download, does run pretty awesome, but you do have to have it on low settings. It's very playable and a smooth experience. You could push it on low settings with the 45 frames per second setting. Well, here I do hope that you can help me out with some recommendations, some Android based games, but here are a few I do find that work pretty awesome now with the RP3 Plus. Legends, a great FPS title with very smooth gameplay, does pick up your controller, but you do have to go to the settings to set them and collaborate it better.
Oh, is that all you got?
Xeno Work Game, an oldie title but still works really well. A great twin stick shooter, does run really smooth and is very controller friendly, and with the graphics set to max. But to my letdown, a cyberpunk style of side-scrolling shooter titled Huntdown looks awesome and does pick up the controller, but runs very slow in certain areas, especially compared to the PlayStation version. I wish they could amend this, because this is a great title. One thing to notice as well with this handheld, there are a fair few titles that I came across on the Play Store that just aren't compatible, as well with the RP3 and the RP3 Plus, which is a bit of a shame. This could really be a dedicated handheld for Android gaming. There are more titles out there that look and run great on this device. I do have dedicated controller support, but the Play Store does not really give you a dedicated section on the store to give you more of an idea of what is compatible with controller support games. But with your recommendations in the comment section, I'm sure I'll be opening up to more titles. Now let's head to my personal most anticipated part of this handheld review, as we are finally getting a good taste of PS2 emulation for the first time for a reasonable budget priced handheld. And of course you have to thank the creators of the emulator Aether SX2 for making it possible for lower end power units to get PlayStation 2 on the go. When it came to the Retroid Pocket 3, PlayStation 2 had minimal compatibility, not really recommended at all. I did have some luck running one of my favourite titles, Grandeur Extreme, running at a standard resolution with very smooth frame rates. Then other light 3D base games running with some frame dips here and there, and no chance with bigger titles. But here now with the Retroid Pocket 3 Plus model, we are getting Grandeur Extreme running at 1.75 resolution. And other light 3D based games running very smooth at a standard resolution. So I gave the Retroid Pocket 3 Plus a good testing on PlayStation 2 emulation using the Aether SX2 app. Here I will quickly show a showcase of titles starting with not playable at all to then running full speed at a higher 1.75 resolution output. So for an example of titles that just weren't playable or just had a minimal gaming experience were titles like Gran Turismo 3 and 4, the Burnout series, as well as the Need for Speed, because they are more graphically demanding, even with the settings of the resolution set to half, which is a big shame. As well as titles like Zone of Enders, WWE All-Stars and Rockman Power Battles. To that is the Japanese name, which is weirdly enough a 2D base game that was not playable. This may be because it is a PlayStation 2 emulating the game in the first place. That's just my assumption anyway. Tekken 4 was somewhat playable in some parts, better performed than the other titles, but still it just wasn't a good enough experience. Metal Gear Solid 2, to my unfortunate dismay, was a no-go as well. Though Final Fantasy X was a playable experience for the first part, it wasn't too long till it just bugged out every time I loaded the game. Now moving on to a playable experience with the resolution set to standard. I found the GTA titles to be running very well with just some minor dips here and there. Other titles that I had access to that had the same experience were Sega Ages Volume No. 5, Shining Force Neo, and Virtual Quest. Lord of the Rings Two Towers and Musashi Legends did have some minor dips but still was very playable, so you can get away with those titles. Now for titles running at a 1.75 resolution with very minor dips at ×2 resolution, which do look awesome on this handheld, were titles like Thunder Force 4, Grandius 5, Soul Divide, which is an emulated game as well, but a 2D based game that seemed to be running really good, and then of course Grandia Extreme, which being a Grandia fan personally, I think is pretty awesome to play this game on the go. Now again, these titles were just the ones I had access to, and a lot of people may have better results by tinkering with the settings. But for me, this is more of a out of the box experience and just changing the settings with the resolution. It is great that we can play a good handful of titles now for the PlayStation 2, but this is more of a tease of what the future is to come. Quickly covering and moving on to the GameCube side of emulation, you do have multiple versions of the Dolphin emulator, but for this review I will be using the Dolphin MMJR, which was an app that was included with the Retroid Pocket 3 and Plus. But for me, I had to go out my way to download this because I did the upgrade board and had to set it up all together manually. All in all, I did not find a good experience as I found with the PlayStation 2, but titles for the GameCube I found to load up on the original Retroid Pocket 3 with minimal settings had some very minor compatibility improvements. To get better luck with GameCube emulation with the Dolphin emulator, you could half the resolution output. Games do not look great at all, it just kind of hurt my eyes and my feelings, so I just wouldn't bother recommending it. Again, I will start with titles with just the basic settings with the resolution set to standard. These games were just not playable, like Metroid Prime, F-Zero and Sonic Adventure 1 and 2. Again, just games I had access to. Now moving on to titles that were playable at the standard resolution with just some minor dips in here were Mario Kart Double Dash, Smash Brothers and Skies of Arcadia. But you might as well play that title on the Dreamcast with a higher resolution and widescreen app, just looks better and runs awesome. More titles I then found were Zelda Wind Waker, Baten Kaitos and X-Men Legends. Again, these were just all set with the standard resolution and running pretty well with just some minor dips. Now titles that were running 100% at a higher resolution was Beautiful Joe, and then we got the WarioWare game, which is pretty awesome, and then we had the Mario Party 6. So these games I do recommend, but of course for a dedicated GameCube emulator handheld this is not worth it, but we are lucky with a few good titles. One of my personal big benefits with the Plus upgrade is with the PlayStation 1 emulation. So we did have originally with the Retroid Pocket 3 with a ×2 resolution with widescreen, and perhaps may get lucky with some hacks and some improvements, but now we can get a ×4 resolution with a lot of these titles with enhancements included. For one of the main reasons to pick up this handheld is for PlayStation Portable emulation. This is definitely a big step up from the original Retroid Pocket 3. We can now get a good stable ×2 resolution on some of the harder to emulate games like God of War. Finally, we can get this now running smooth, as well as the majority of the titles can run at a ×3 or even a ×4 resolution. So these games are looking really nice, especially when you got this handheld with a video output to your main TV. Now for you guys that originally bought the Retroid Pocket 3 and are very unfortunate to hear of this Retroid Pocket 3 Plus that has just came out, I would recommend just selling the Retroid Pocket 3 if you can, and then you got the money towards purchasing this, but we shouldn't be in this position in the first place. And again then, if everyone is selling the Retroid Pocket 3, everyone's just going to want to buy the Retroid Pocket 3 Plus, and no one's going to be purchasing the Retroid Pocket 3 in the first place now. So we are a bit stuck in a limbo here. For me personally, I could not justify the cost of purchasing the Retroid Pocket 3 and now the Plus board, because just financially it's just not really worth it, over about £230. So I wish I did pick up the Plus in the first place, but I can say now, if you got this straight away, this is definitely worth it and one of the more competitive handhelds that are out there. And this will be my now favourite handheld to take on my journeys, with that slight taste of resentment for paying all this money in the first place. So as this year is coming to an end, we've had a fair few of these handhelds being released by companies like Retroid, Anbernic, Powkitty and many more. So there's a fair few to try and think which one is the best for you. So I will be covering a video on this entire year of releases. I haven't got every single one of them, just a lot of them I would like to show and recommend myself personally. So keep an eye out for that video coming out soon. So as always, if you like this video, hit that button. You want to support, click subscribe, leave a comments below, and I'll catch you lot on my next video.